And so, forgive the computer problems, but we will call this meeting to order. And we will notice that all board members are present. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And next, 1.03 is the approval of the agenda. I will need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made and second. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Please vote. Ayes have it. The motion passes. Next item on the agenda is public comments. We do have one patron who wishes to come forward, and that's Dr. Mary Byrne. Welcome. You want me to read the disclaimer? Are you familiar with the disclaimer?
I do have that memorized.
I figured you might. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I'd like to address a contract item reported in item 4 on tonight's agenda. That's contracts with Illustrative Math and McGraw-Hill for Illustrative Mathematics, as well as a proposal under item 10, the strategic discussion. First, I'd like to reiterate that Illustrative Math is a curriculum. Attached to the cover letter of the handouts I have for you are screenshots of IM that verify it is a curriculum, and that's going to be important for the discussion I have. Second, the board alone is responsible for approval and adoption of the curriculum used in the district. The cover letter includes the statute that says each school district shall be responsible for each school board shall be responsible for the approval and adoption of curriculum used by the district. And what's really my focus of tonight is the statute that says there should be public access for inspection of the instructional materials. The school board of each district shall provide that all public school instructional material intended for use in connection with any public school classroom instruction or any public school research or experimentation program or project shall be available. Shall is mandatory. Shall be available for inspection by any person. For the purpose of this section, classroom instruction shall mean any public school instruction involving teachers and students or peers and students. So that's not a concrete item list there. Research or experimentation program or project shall mean any public school research or experimentation program or project designed to explore or develop new and unproven teaching methods and techniques, which would include pilots. What is not in that definition is any restriction saying that software would not be available to the public. Now, the reason that's important is because you are going to see a presentation saying that a consultant is going to be hired to examine the alignment between your curriculum and the standards. My question to you is, how come a consultant can get access to that curriculum and materials to evaluate the alignment, but as per statute, the public should be able to do that and can't? All right, I have a list of handouts for you to examine. One is a copy of the email and the attached PowerPoints that I sent to you on February 11th, as well as a written response from the board acknowledging receipt of that email. The purpose of this attachment is to verify you're aware, according to DESE's July 2016 resource for Missouri educators and administrators, the Missouri Learning Standards in Mathematics is equivalent to the Common Core aligned National Council of Teachers of Mathematics standards, and that DESE recommended illustrative mathematics as an exemplar curriculum. It also documents that you're aware of the widening gap between SPS's average Algebra 1 EOC and the state average. It also includes item 2, a May 28 letter written by Missouri University President Emeritus Melvin George, a professor of mathematics, co-signed by 51 professors in the Department of Mathematics at MU, Washington University in St. Louis, and the Missouri University of Science and Technology, to the Missouri Commissioner of Education, Dr. Kent King, he was alive at that time in 2008, stating that the standards prescribing that students explore, investigate, and develop or conduct experiments are associated with the National Council of Teacher Mathematics Standards that do not adequately prepare students for college algebra, nor do they prepare students for STEM. So that is the same organization that was an architect of the Common Core standards. Regardless of what you call them, that's what Missouri is implementing them. The third item is a white paper written by members of the Common Core Validation Committee who did not sign off on the standards. One was a Stanford mathematician, James Milgram, and a former member of the Massachusetts Board of Education, Sandra Stotsky, explaining that Common Core math standards are designed to make students minimally college ready, meaning community college ready, and defining college as a community college, not your selective colleges, and they are not for STEM. That was an interview with Jason Zimba, one of the architects of the Common Core standards. He says, no, they're not for STEM. Okay, so that transcript is in the third handout. The fourth is James Milgram's list of missing or delayed math standards in Common Core State Standards Framework. The fifth is an excerpt of a white paper written by a math educator, James Wilson, explaining that the trend to keep more abstract content out of early grades and focus on the fundamentals of arithmetic is prevalent in all top-performing countries on international math assessments. In other words, taking these abstract concepts and shoving them down into the early grades for discussion, exploration, model design, etc., is not what other countries do who are outperforming the United States. Finally, you'll see a profile of SPS for Dreambox. What to be aware of is that when you compare Dreambox claims to our MAP
Dr. Byrne,
scores,
you need to wrap it up, please.
I get it. I want you to know that they're inconsistent, that we have declining scores in our MAP, and they are huge gaps over time, steady among cohorts. Okay, so you should be aware of this. You can finish reading my cover letter, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you contact me. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the comments? All right, thank you. There are no information reports, but in the contracts, agreements, and change orders, we have Carol coming forward, and she will spend some time up at the podium tonight.
I will spend time at the podium this evening. Thank you very much. We have posted for your review our contracts, agreements, change orders, and bids. And while there are a number of items posted for you, you know that you have the next 2 weeks to review them. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and we'll get you answers on those. Are there any questions for me this evening?
Any questions for Carol? Thank you.
All right.
The next one is item 5.01, board policy adoptions and revisions.
And this is a very simple change recommendation, just a few words to align better to our practices with regard to intra-district transfers. This has been reviewed by MSBA, as is our normal practice, and is placed before you for first read. We'll seek your vote at the next board meeting.
Now, this is not a standard MSBA policy, as I understand it,
Right.
because we're somewhat of an outlier.
We are an outlier. Not many districts allow for intra-district transfers like we do, and part of that is due to our size.
But MSBA has reviewed it.
Correct.
Any questions at this point? And let's move on to new business. Item 6.01 is property, automobile, and liability insurance renewal.
So for each of these items this evening, this is for first read information, and again, you'll have the next 2 weeks to continue to review and identify any questions you may have. The first item presented for your consideration is the property, automobile, and liability insurance renewal, and our current policies will expire March 31, 2020. We did have our district broker, Allis, Akers, and Arney, conduct a bid process, and the recommendation is to continue with the current provider. We did have some other bids, but our current provider provided the best benefit for the district. It does show an increase of 18.3%. Part of that is due to our experience. The fiscal note annual amount would be $1,150,370, and that would be included within the risk management budget.
Carol, can you offer any sort of commentary on what might have contributed to the investment?
Well, we are each year taking a look at property values, but truly, we've had a few claims that have caused our experience rating to be increased. We also looked at our deductibles to ascertain if we could make an adjustment in that regard. And it was just a hot market is what I would offer to you in general. That's the message that I received from our broker.
Any comments or questions for Carol on this item?
Hot market meaning?
That bids were just coming in high.
Any others? All right, item 6.02 is bank depository bid.
Okay, so Missouri statute requires that we bid our bank services every 5 years, and we currently have services provided to us by Commerce Bank, and we did let an RFP in January. It's January 2020. We received 5 proposals from local firms, local institutions, and that information was evaluated. We had 10 criteria under which we evaluated the information, including required services, their approach to customer service, training and implementation, and certainly a look at the aggregate cost of the services relative to the interest rate that we would earn on our retained investments. At this point in time, administration recommends that Commerce Bank be retained as our bank depository service provider, and that contract would be effective July 1 of 2020.
Comments or questions for Carol? Are they our current bank?
They are current, and I will tell you that we had great competition, I would say to you, on this with regard to local institutions, and it was a very close margin in terms of the selection process.
Who were the 5 proposals? Who did you get it from?
Okay, I will share that with you. We received a response from U.S. Bank, UMB Bank, Guarantee Bank, Central Bank, and Commerce Bank on bank depository. Commerce has done an outstanding job providing services for us for the past number of years.
Any others? Ready to move on to the next item? Next
So-
item is 6.03, purchasing card services bid.
So at the same time that we let the bank depository bid, we also let the purchasing card services bid, and that is common practice for public school districts to do those in conjunction with one another. They were separate bids, though, and entities could bid on one or both of the items. And we did receive, excuse me, while I switch my pouch here. We did receive 4 proposals with regard to purchasing card services. And again, these services would be effective July 1st. Our current provider is Central Bank, and the new provider recommended for the P-card services would be Commerce Bank as well. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I
Yeah.
was going to invite questions,
Yeah.
but you're
So
not.
the 4 that did respond, we had responses from those same 4 institutions with the exception of Guarantee Bank. And I believe they don't provide P-card services.
Comments or questions for Carol? All right, that item and all the way up to item 4.01. So 4.01 through 6.03, those are all first reads, and we will vote on those next board meeting.
That's correct.
6.04,
Okay.
FY21 budget development, guys. Here we go.
I know. Let's see if I can figure out how to run the machine, right? Okay. Oops, there it is. Yes, it is that time when we begin our budget development process. And my job is to help us recenter on that which we encounter along the budgetary path. And so this evening, we'll again talk about those standard observations on budget development, including strategic plan alignment and compliance, as well as the process. So we are well aware of our 4 goals within, or focus areas rather, within our strategic plan. And we continue to utilize our goals and our strategic plan in the budget development process. Every leader stays focused on the work that needs to be delivered. Important for you to know, because this is one of the areas that you are responsible to approve each year, that we do maintain compliance with the statute and board policy when it comes to developing the budget, and we ensure that these 5 components are included within our budget message each year. Budgets can be very robust and thick, many pages, or they can be very basic, and we do follow the statutory requirement. We've got our message, we have the revenues and expenditures detailed out in the way that they should be, and then we also include the debt information as well as a budget summary. This shows you the budget development calendar, and I do like to remind our board members each year that it's an interesting place to be when you're working on the budget for public ed in the state of Missouri because of the way the workflow operates. And what I mean by that is you're asked to set a budget by the end of June of this year when we don't yet have our assessed valuation that will come to us in August, on which our tax levy is set. That really solidifies one of our primary revenue points, our local revenue based on assessed valuation and our tax rate. And we also know that currently the legislative session is underway, and much of that won't land until in May. And so we potentially could have new information that we would receive then. But in the meantime, in good faith and based on historical information, we must journey forward and conduct our budget process. And for us, we start those meetings with our leaders in December, January. Our executive leadership team is responsible to submit information forward from their leaders with whom they engage, and all of that culminates in a budget recommendation for you to receive in in June, and then vote on by the end of June. So through the budget development process, again, we conduct those meetings, we identify needs in the system. Our senior leadership team members do provide feedback to executive leaders, and we move forward with the prioritization. This slide shows you our prioritization of needs, and this is something that our executive leadership team revisits every year. We happen to have landed on the same priority needs in the same order as we did last year, and that is that salary and benefit of our current teachers, staff, and leaders would be our primary goal, that strategies and staffing to support under-resourced and underrepresented students would be the second, followed by instructional and/or support staff who impact the classroom, and lastly, support and/or strategic expansion of current initiatives. So focusing on those categories to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our students. This slide shows you our funds, and this will be representative of the information you'll receive in the coming board presentations on budget. You can see that our general and teacher funds comprise the majority of our budget delivery. We also have the debt service fund that represents how we repay the bond issues that have been approved by our voters, a capital fund which takes care of our basic needs within the system that would include furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and other projects that would not be funded by bond funds. And there's the bond at 15%, and our health benefit trust fund is our self-insurance fund. Lastly, we have a very tiny sliver that doesn't even reach a full percent of the pie, and that's the Go Caps fund, and that's another fiduciary fund that we operate in the district. So as we journey forward, when we talk with you about the general fund and the teachers fund, that is all about people and paying salaries for our teachers and all other staffs within the district. We'll talk about purchase services in the coming meetings, as well as supplies that include books and fuel and paper and a variety of things. The debt service fund, again, retires the debt that includes principal, interest, and fees based on our bond approvals. And our capital projects, again, covers facility acquisition. The bond fund is a sub-fund of the capital projects fund and is reported to the state as a combined fund, but we do separate that out for you each month as we report to you. The health benefit trust fund is primarily supported by contributions that the district makes for employees, and then secondarily by the contributions that employees make for their family or other dependent care coverages. We do have a wellness program that is funded through that as well. The Greater Ozarks Center for Advanced Professional Studies, again, that provides instruction for a variety of students in participating districts, and these are run in cooperation with not only the Chamber of Commerce, but also businesses in our community, where students are able to learn hands-on in a professional setting. You've learned about that many times through focus area reports, but this again supports the fiscal responsibilities of managing the funds that run through that account. This represents our budget presentation schedule. So due to the change in how we'll be having meetings coming up, for instance, we've reduced to one meeting in May, we're combining some of these reports together so that as we journey forward, you'll see the same information, but it will be relative to the current year to provide you with that baseline before we make a budgetary recommendation for you. So next meeting will be on GoCaps and the Health Benefit Trust Fund. That's it for this evening. Do you have any questions for me, or is there anything that you would like to see handled differently or delivered in a different way?
Any response to that?
It's good. Makes sense.
Just stay the course?
Steady on then.
Okay.
All right. Next item is unfinished business, and that is the Early Childhood Center Naming Committee.
Yes. So this is a familiar conversation given our recent work with regard to what has now become the Ada Fulbright Early Childhood Center. And this evening, administration recommends to you this slate of volunteers within the community and also staff members to serve on a naming committee for what is currently referenced as the Shining Stars Early Childhood Center. The committee representatives would include community members Mike White, and he would be willing to serve as chair again, so that would be his third situation where he's serving as a naming committee representative and the chair. Charlotte Harden would be a returning member from the last Early Childhood Center committee. Tom Prater, previous board member, is willing to serve on this committee for us, and also Bridget Mars. Those would be two new committee members. From an administration perspective, Missy Riley, our Director of Early Childhood and Parents as Teachers, would be a returning member. Christy Davis, the current building director, would be on the committee. And teachers Margaret Watson and Stephanie Loon would be serving. They currently teach in the Shining Stars building. The student identified is Michael Owsley, who served on the last Early Childhood Center. And I would serve as district liaison.
Need a motion.
This item is recommended for vote this evening so that we can move forward with the work.
So to get the discussion going, if there is any, the recommended action is that the board appoint the committee as presented for the purpose of recommending appropriate names for the Shining Stars Early Childhood Center located at 2525 West College Road. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there a second, Jill?
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Jerry and Jill. Any discussion on the motion to propose this team of veterans and newcomers?
I think this is the right approach.
Then, if we're ready to vote, let's vote. Ayes have it. Motion passes. Item 8 is our
Do you
2019.
have a schedule on that?
Actually, in discussing with people before we posted their name publicly, we have indicated that we would have a meeting Thursday evening at 5 p.m.
Getting right to it. Excellent.
Thank you.
So we move on to item 8, and instead of Travis Shaw,
Yes,
we have Carol.
yes. Dr. Shaw was not available to be with us this evening. He is on duty, but at a different venue. So this evening, these items are for your vote consideration this evening. The first is change orders and agreements, and as you can see, there are a number of items listed. They are all very small in nature. The total construction addition is indicated for each package, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those, but Basically, it's business as usual in terms of delivering these projects.
Any comments or questions for Carol?
The aggregate contingency still covers all of these costs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you'll notice that in package number 4, the total construction addition was 44,000 and change. There's no contingency available. So that's when we start reallocating from an overall contingency line that's in the overall project.
Correct.
We just move that up and fund it out of that. And that number is still significant.
It is.
No one was expecting.
Yeah, yeah.
We're very pleased.
Yep. So, the recommended action is that the board approve the change orders and agreements as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Denise, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. We ready to vote? Please vote. Ayes have it. Motion passes. Item 8.02, utilities easement.
So this and the next item are connected, and they are both relative to the vacation of Sherman Avenue. So this is to support the Boyd Elementary. And basically, this is an easement for the city of Springfield and city utilities. It's 8.25 feet in width, and it is a necessary utility easement that we would entrust to them, given the work that needs to occur in that area. It does require a separate vote from the Board of Education for each of these easements.
So the recommended action is that the board authorize and approve granting a utility easement by the school district to the city of Springfield and city utilities approximately 8.25 feet in width along a vacated strip of alleyway located west of the new Boyd Elementary School project from Division to Locust Street. Tim Rosenberry, President of the Board of Education, is authorized and directed to execute these documents on behalf of the school district. Motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jill. That was Alina and Jill. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not? Please vote. The ayes have it. Motion passes. The next one is sanitary sewer easement.
If I may assist you, the motion is that the board authorize and approve granting a sanitary sewer easement by the school district to the city of Springfield, approximately 8.25 feet in width, along a vacated strip of alleyway located west of the new Boyd Elementary School project from Division to Locust Street. Tim Rosenberry, President of the Board of Education, is authorized and directed to execute these documents on behalf of the school district. So it's the same type, but it's for sanitary instead of utilities.
In order to get this on the table, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Alina. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. Any discussion on the motion? Ready to vote? Please vote. Ayes have it. Motion passes. 8.04 is commissioning services.
Yes. So we have posted for you information regarding the commissioning services. This is basically a third-party entity that comes in to ensure that the coordination and the work that has been done by the MEP, which is representative of the mechanical, the electrical, and the plumbing contractors, that all of that is working well together and protects the district asset. And we had an RFQ that was let January 25. We had 3 responses, and the recommendation is before you. It totals $335,895. The work basically is being allocated between 2 of the responders, and they were the best value for the district and also from a workload perspective, the best for the district.
So let's get this on the table. Recommended action is that the board approve the recommended commissioning contracts as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Charles. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Alina. So, does everybody understand commissioning? Are we good? Okay. was gonna say, I'll be happy to talk about it. It's good, it's
That'll
good
be an
stuff.
hour, but-
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
want to,
that-
that's great, I think.
No, I'm good. I'm good with your understanding of it. Please vote. It does make a big difference in how the building operates and from day one. All right, the next one is 8.05, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, also known as FF&E.
Yes. So this evening, we have a variety of vendors whom have been listed and also the amounts that would be allocated to them. It's also totaled by building, if you're interested in that. Han is the district-approved vendor for office furniture. They have provided proposals for meeting the needs of Delaware, Sunshine, and Fulbright. Verco is approved as the district vendor for classroom furniture, and they have provided their allocations. Park Planet has been selected to provide, as the approved cooperative, to provide the playground equipment at Delaware, Sunshine, and Fulbright. I want to point out to you that Travis and I had a conversation about ensuring accessibility was made through this playground. We've had some challenges in the past in that area, and he assured me that it is 100% accessible for students. So that was an important point to share. The other vendors, the multiple vendors listed in the grid, are representative of audio-visual equipment vendors, and Bruce Douglas has partnered with the bond project team to ensure we've provided a robust list of the needs that will be met for Delaware, Sunshine included as well, and Fulbright. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions for Carol? I have one, and this is maybe not a fair question.
I may not know the answer.
Yeah,
but
yeah, you may have to
We
come
can
back.
try.
With these items, that looks like it comes pretty close, if not all the way to buying out the project.
Mhm.
I assume we have maybe some signage left.
Right.
But we just have very few things
Very,
left
yeah.
to identify as hard numbers,
Right.
as I understand it.
That, I would agree with you on that.
Okay.
I'm not at the table for all of those conversations, Travis is, but we are moving quickly through the needs and staying on track in terms of identifying the appropriate bids and vendors.
It's good to have that done at this time because we'll blink our eyes and it's time to start school, isn't it?
Very close, very close.
Okay. All right.
We are discussing schedules and timing as well.
All right, so the recommended actions, the board approved the recommended furniture, fixtures, and equipment purchases as presented. Is there a motion?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Denise. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. Any discussion on the motion? We ready to vote? Please vote. All right. 8.06, the last of this group, is the Hillcrest Water Main relocation.
Yes. So before you is a recommendation, and as a reminder, we have Buxton Kubik Dodd as architect, and Nabholz is the contractor. We do have a gross maximum price provided for you at $908,674. I want to highlight for you that that includes an actual bid of $543,788 for the project work itself. There are allowances for unforeseen conditions that are factored in so that we have protection on the gross maximum price, and that's $200,550, and other general expenditures at $164,336. This is in conjunction with work by city utilities. They are engaged in that process, given that it is a water pipe belonged by city utilities, and so this recommendation, again, is for vote this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to work toward an answer on that. One other comment I would make is that geotechnical services were performed to help us with assurance that the right bid has come forward.
Okay, let's go ahead and get this on the table. The recommended actions that the board approve the construction contract as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Charles. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jill. Is there any discussion on this motion or any questions for Carol? Any? Then are we ready to vote? Let's vote.
Gotta do it.
This clears the way for us to be able to connect all buildings and provide a safer environment for Hillcrest students. All right. Okay, thank you, Carol.
I think I'm finished.
I think you're done for now.
Nice job.
All right, so our next item, there is public comments, and we have no public comments for non-agenda items, so we move on to a strategic discussion on which we will participate in a dialogue focused on selected pertinent topics. This time, it's Focus Area 1, Goal 2, the mid-year update. And who are we welcoming to the podium? We are welcoming Dr. Dublin. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you. All right. Beginning here.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see y'all.
Nice to see you.
Glad to be here. So, as Tim said, I'm here to share the strategic plan update, and I'll be joined by many of my friends. I'm just the one that gets the pleasure of kicking us off this evening, so glad to be here. It is Focus Area 1, Goal 2, mid-year report. And as you know, just a quick review of some of the slides that you see for each of these reports, that we do have four focus areas. And this is focused on the first one, Goal 2, within the Focus Area 1 of student success and learning support. There's what that is specifically, gets a little more detailed into what the Goal 2 is related to learning experiences and academic achievement and personal growth. And tonight, what you will be seeing is these 6 strategies under Focus Area 1, Goal 2. And so we're going to start with extracurricular, move to academic, tools, resources, and then early childhood, and finish up with diverse and underrepresented students, and lastly, our graduation rate. So those will be the 6 strategies you'll be seeing tonight. It's not working. Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce our Director of Athletics for the district, Josh Scott. He's going to take us away with our first strategy, 1.2.5, around extracurricular. Good evening.
Thank you.
Are we going to do some exercises first, or are we going to just jump right into it?
No,
We
need to
can.
Jack.
We'd like to go through.
So we would
that one.
not like to.
Yeah, and there's some yoga, we can add that in. But we're looking for adding opportunities for everyone to compete and be a part of it, so we can go ahead and do that. That'll go. I'm excited to do a mid-year report for extracurricular activities, and again, we're not just focusing on traditional opportunities, we're focusing on how to get the most amount of our kids participating in something before, after school, due to the research, more engaged in school, going to stay there longer, show up more often, and achieve higher in classrooms. So really excited to say, note a couple of the highlights. We've increased our total engagement at the middle school level to date by 81 students. We are at 3,370 single count individuals up till this point before spring seasons. Note we start spring track on Monday, so that is going to be a bigger number for 9 of our middle schools. That is anything going on before school, after school, and counts activities and athletics. Specifically, one of our engagement things that the school board brought in were the engagement programs through our middle schools, and through our 10 middle schools, we've approved 92 different groups at a student rate of 1,711. So we're really excited about that program and the opportunities that we are offering for students. And that goes from a math club to a cooking club to chess to drama, everything. So we're really, really excited. Yes, ma'am.
The 81 increased by 81 from last year?
From last year.
Okay, just
Yes.
clarifying. Okay.
From last year, sorry.
Josh, is 3370, that's non-duplicated, so that's individual students.
Individual
Now, single
students.
count means they may
Correct.
have participated in more than one activity, but there's 3,370 kids.
Absolutely. If you played football and basketball, we counted you once.
Okay.
Okay. Over 100 students, really proud of this. Over 100 student athletes took place in our first ever March with the NAACP at Dr. King Parade. Really excited about that. The coaches, the programs that took place, have a picture to share a little bit later, but really excited about that engagement. Our archery program continues to improve not only in numbers, but in competitiveness. We increased, I believe, 32 students for 843 archers on the year. which is just a crazy number. We had a partnership with the fairgrounds this year, and it was wonderful. If you go to the state competitions where we had 5 teams qualify for coming up at the end of next year, when you walk into that state competition, you're going to ask, are we in the fairgrounds? It looks exactly like it. And anything with any activity or athletics that you compete with, the more at home and like experiences you can make, the better experience, better opportunity you're going to have there. So it was a wonderful event, a wonderful partnership, and we were able to shoot one day what used to take us 4 days because of our partnership with the fairgrounds. So it was fantastic. 180 elementary students participated in the second year of elementary science Olympiad, and that is an increase of 80 students at that level, which is fantastic. Kickapoo High School placed 4th in the inaugural Missouri Cybersecurity Competition. I don't know what that means, but if any of those kids email me, I'm not going to open it. Future Farmers of America was expanded to Hillcrest. And a really exciting aspect, and when you look at 1.2.5, what we're trying to get is we're trying to get engagement for kids that aren't engaged. 17 of our 22 members were not engaged in anything before FFA was brought in at Hillcrest. So when you look at what we're trying to do and data that's backing it up, I think that is excellent data. Moving on, Kickapoo and Central both sent robotics teams to Drury University. The Kickapoo girls team earned first overall, and Central team won the design award, which is fantastic for the first event there. High school athletic participation, our overall participation numbers through the winter increased by 95. And again, that's without spring numbers coming in. All middle school programs, I'm really excited about this, are now competing out of the district. Now our schools that we're competing against out of the conference, in districts, in sectionals that have played competition further away, our kids are now experiencing that. Our student athletes are now understanding riding a bus out of town, showing up at a place, playing someone at 7th and 8th grade level, and it's not just a city game anymore. We're expanding a little bit larger. So all of our programs are now doing that. A middle school advisory team was established where we knocked around ideas and provided input for possible athletic and activity expansion through an updated 5-year plan. We had a fantastic 5-year plan. It was ending, but that was a 5-year plan before a lot of the structure has changed. So it was time to update it and look at it, and it's a living, breathing document that we keep trying to make a little bit better. And our middle school and our high school coaches began discussions on academic performance of students. Should there be a set of academic expectations in order to increase our graduation rate? One of the things that we talked about as coaches is what is our role and responsibility to our school greater than on the field? And we think one place we can do that is making those connections with our students, making them understand if you want to participate with us, your grades are important. We'll give you opportunity to do it, to have study hall, to work with each other and keep pushing through. So really proud of that one. This last picture I get to finish with, because one of the things that we talk about is we're all SPS. We're all together. We're all pushing and moving in the same direction. I love this picture. That's over 100 of our student athletes from our 5 high schools, many different sports and programs in there, all working together. So really excited about how we came out for our community on this day.
Very nice.
And now I believe I pass it on to
Josh,
Dr.
before you
Anderson.
go,
Yeah.
Quick question. Denise, did you have something?
Yeah, I do. I mentioned this, Josh and I talked earlier, is there was a time when MSIP allowed, and I'm going back to fourth cycle, where MSIP allowed a district to list those things that you were proud of, that you felt like that had played a part in student academic and learning progress that were not assessed by the map. And that has gone away, because now it's all about the map. But these things he's listed on these slides are all those things that would have been in that. And some of you may shake your head, you might recall back when we got the chance to do that, is that these are all things that would have been terrific to place on an MSIP review of things that we believe and we feel like have assisted students in their academic and their social maturity progress that are not assessed by the MAP. So congratulations, and that's
Thank you.
a great job.
Josh, I had a question. I went to a presentation last Monday where somebody from, I think it's called Oz Trails, Northwest Arkansas Trails, Bentonville and that area. And they're doing a lot of mountain biking, and now the mountain biking is coming into the schools, and there are school teams that are doing competitive mountain biking. Springfield is about to get its first mountain bike. Is there any mountain biking going on in these extracurriculars yet?
I actually went over to Carver for their day that they welcomed all the elementary schools in to celebrate different types of activities, and I did see a mountain bike in the corner. So I believe that there is a mountain bike club maybe over at Carver, but I don't know where they go, what they do. So it was probably creeping in somewhere.
I suspect that's going to hit this community pretty hard in the next 5 years. Mountain biking is going to be pretty strong.
Absolutely.
Esports,
Yes.
where's that going?
I believe that is what's going to explode and blow up first.
Yeah.
So, yep, we're working towards some opportunities to provide opportunities for our students with that.
Get a scholarship at Drury to do esports.
I
Absolutely.
attended my first collegiate esports competition, not understanding a single thing I was looking at, and really excited about it. however. And we won.
Yep, absolutely.
Hashtag all we do is win.
As long
right.
as we don't give up the things that happen on grass and
Sure. I don't think any of our expansions
Schools,
have
water.
been looked at
All of
at a cost of what we currently have.
Got it.
there's so much
Thank you.
learning that goes on. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Great job.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Yes.
So I'm here to share some of our annual growth updates on how we are doing academically K-12, and I'm going to start off with highlights and next steps K-12, and then give an elementary, and then turn time over for some secondary updates to my counterpart. So a few highlights that we want you to be aware of is that our comprehensive and targeted schools are collaborating monthly with each other on how they can continue to grow and help our students, especially in our under-resourced and unrepresented students and sites where we have a majority of them. We are proud of our partnership with our learning support team and our AAA team who come into our principal meetings monthly so that we can get some update and regular practice around end of course, around MAP, released items, and that is critical for our students. So the first time when the students see the end of course and when they see the MAP, it's not the first time that the students are exposed to that type of testing, and we feel that that's critical and important. Our curriculum coordinators are providing regular updates specifically to our middle school principals, because at the middle school level, that's where the IM has already played out and been implemented. We have a team of district leaders that are working around identifying the best math practices, as we know that has been an area of concern. And our recommendations have gone forth around those best practices, model classrooms, the utilization, and we are seeing an uptake in our common assessments as well. And of course, we knew that there was a curriculum audit coming specifically for math at K through 5 and in 6-12 through the ELA. Making sure that what we have and what is being taught, getting third-party eyes on that, and we feel that's a critical and the right move to go forward to help our students and our teachers perform at their greatest levels. Specific to the elementary academics, what I wish to share with you tonight. So train your eye to some colorization there. We have red and green are the main primary colors here, and red is not desirable and green is desirable. So we're starting off with our math comparison. This is the iReady middle of the year math comparison. So when we compare our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders from this year to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grader performance last year at the middle of the year, we can see that our students this year are not performing as well as our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders last year. Overall, we see that in math performance, it's down by 4.4%. specific, we see the greatest gap there with our ELL students, and pretty close to 0 with our black population in comparison to last year. We do see some gap closure between our black and white students and our Hispanic and white students from this year concerning math. Concerning reading, we see again, red is not desirable, green is desirable, and we can see that in our reading overall that we are growing in this time, middle of the year, from our students this year as compared to our students 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade last year, and a couple of highlights within that. However, the subgroup analysis shows that that gap has grown this time between this year and last year. So we are pretty excited. I have to say one highlight that we're excited about with all of the green in the reading is that this is an implementation year for our new English language arts curriculum. And to avoid an implementation dip is a real thing in the first year. To continue our growth, we're pretty excited about that. So to turn the time over to how we're doing in middle school.
Jay, before you leave.
Yes.
Questions.
Go ahead.
So, you know, nothing to celebrate. I'm thinking, I'm saying this and I'm not being critical. In our math comparison from last year to this year, we're down. All categories. And as drastic as 9.6% and 4.4% overall. So, and there's so much, and I know there's so many factors involved in student learning progress, so much what they bring with them to the classroom,
Correct.
and what they don't bring with them to the classroom. But we have to look to you, I look to you for, can you give some thoughts on some whys? Because it's very clear our teachers are working very hard.
Sure,
I hear from
absolutely.
them. They're working hard. Our principals are working hard. They're looking at data. The buildings are looking at data. And so just to, as a board member, I don't know if I'm looking for reassurance from you or maybe some answers from you. What's going on?
Right. So, you know, that's the magic question that we're trying to get at the heart of. And I'm going to come back to this slide right here, especially that last bullet. We know that a curriculum audit is coming because when we look at it, as we put our heads together and all that, we learned that, hey, we don't have the answers amongst us and we're looking for some help. So we believe that the curriculum audit is going to help us because as we have watched a few years of these math scores go to where they are and we are not happy or satisfied or pleased with that, we need an outside perspective. So is our written curriculum aligned to the standards, and our teachers teaching the aligned curriculum to the standards that the students are being assessed on? That is where that third eye, that new view is going to be extremely helpful for us, because as we go into it as leaders who are close to it, as teachers who are close to it, as principals who are close to it, and we're looking for those things, sometimes we give credit where credit may or may not be due. And so we are looking for that outside source. Are we aligned in our thinking, in our curriculum, in our teaching of the curriculum? Are we aligned to the standards along the way? That's where this is going to be very helpful for us.
So you're considering this curriculum audit as sort of like a diagnostic team?
I think it covers that because
And
we're
go
looking
in.
both at the curriculum itself, but they're also looking at lesson plans and how teachers are teaching the
So
curriculum.
will they be visiting classrooms?
Yes, they will be.
Okay. Will teachers be one? I mean, will they be aware?
Teachers are we are contacting through building principals,
Okay, that this
teacher
is
schedules, and
happening,
this,
why
yes.
it's happening,
This is-
and it's to assist and help us find some.
It is not around being punitive, it is
No.
around
how we
assistance and
can-
support.
Because this tells us we need,
Yes,
we've got to do something. We need
absolutely,
something.
absolutely.
Yeah, I too would notice, like everybody else, a lot of red, particularly in math. And,
Right.
I'm trying to get my head around it, because I would second what Denise says. Teachers are working really, really hard. I know the fidelity question is coming up.
Sure.
One of the things we implemented admittedly, it's a subset of students. But for example, the Club Encore,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's under 1.15 2.9 that we kind of celebrate a 1.5, give or take, % increase in participation. If participation is going up, but performance, at least in terms of math, is not, where is the disconnect?
That's something we'll have to look into, absolutely. And I don't have an answer from you from this point right now.
You know, early on, first year of Encore, we're looking at data points, not trends. But now we're getting close to trends.
Right.
And so, saying that it's, well, this is not what you're saying, but we have occasionally heard, well, that's a data point, we need to keep an eye on that. We're now stacking up data points in a way that kind of sort of becomes a trend. So I
Right.
would want to look at the efficacy of that program in particular and see academic efficacy. It may have lots of other positive impacts. But that in particular, because I can't sort of align in my head why participation is going up, but performance, at least in terms of math.
And Charles, to your point, I think you've hit upon a key point. This is now where, as we're entering how many times we have done it in this manner and looked at this manner, we're able to identify trends much more clearly than we have in the past. And so that allows us, when we work with audit teams, when we work with our teachers, when we work with our principals, we're going to be able to dig in deeper as to why and have some better answers.
And do we have any, looking at or any research that in those elementaries, and I'm kind of going back from my past experience, for those buildings, those elementary buildings, where you have teachers that love teaching math, are very comfortable teaching math, that they teach math during the day, as perhaps that's their teaching, and I'm not talking about compartmentalized.
Right.
I guess I am. Are we doing that, and are we
So-
showing it in those buildings that we have that taking place?
So one of the discussion points we talked about was developing those model classrooms, and those model classrooms are those teachers really identified that are very effective at teaching math and love teaching math, and making sure that we're utilizing them. And as we are piloting different math options for next year, that's one of our options, is which one is going to help our teachers really come out and teach that love of math and learning. So that's one of those points right there. And the other thing that I think is important to note, as we discuss with many elementary teachers, they get into elementary teacher because they love kids and they love reading and telling stories and all that. A lot of them don't go into to teach math. So we are working on our math mindset that we have to love it all and love teaching math to students, love teaching students first, love teaching reading, and love teaching math just the same, and science and all the other areas just as much.
Well, and that's great to say, but the reality is, and we've got to get down to the reality of this, and perhaps it may require a change in what a schedule looks like in an elementary, but if you've got some rock star elementary math teachers, might require utilizing them in a different way and changing that school day. And that kind of goes from watching and being around those teachers that, same with science, that love teaching those subjects and do a terrific job.
Our audit does include math minutes, look at how much we're teaching math in comparison to reading.
So we're going to be open.
Yes.
To all things that we might discover. Okay.
Other questions?
Any other questions for Jay?
Okay, so I'll be up here to share some information regarding middle school academics and then also some high school numbers for you. So middle school math, you'll see, as was just the conversation, very similar numbers. We recognize that math at the middle school level is our area of growth for sure. Overall, it's 2.5%. And again, similar as Jay just shared, and as you know, red is not where we want to be. All of our subgroups dipped. The ones to point out, Hispanic and yellow, 1.3, 3.2 and 1.3, free at 2.4, kind of weird where we went all. So if there are some positives, which green is good, obviously, in the subgroup gaps, we did have some gap closure. 3 out of the 4 subgroups did close the gaps, 0.5, 1.0, and 1.3. Hispanic was the one that did increase the gap by 1%.
So I'm not a whiz on these kinds of analysis the way some of my colleagues are here, but I'm going to say something that I thought in the first presentation, and now I'm thinking again. I think that since the numbers are poor in general, that isn't that the gap is closing in a good way, but that the other numbers are coming down.
Could be.
That's how
Yeah.
that's what I'm seeing from this horrible
Yeah.
report. And my friend just nodded, so I think I'm onto something, maybe. I mean, I know, I'm not saying it represents that, but that's certainly, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Right. Well, and I think what you're getting at, I think this may be what you're getting at, that potentially in the free versus full, if your full also went down.
Yes.
And that's why the gap closed, that's
Yes.
not necessarily a good thing. It's gap closure, but.
exactly what I was-
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You're gonna
Some
find
of these
out.
green, that is why.
Have you already looked into that, or is that something you're looking into going
No,
forward?
we've identified that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I guess I would raise a question, not so much about Encore as extracurriculars, which I'm really celebrating. But one of the things, they're not important in and of themselves, although I kind of think they are, but they're also a means to the end of increasing academic achievement.
Yes.
Engagement leads to academic achievement. Now, this probably is a one-year data point, but at least in this 1 year, the data point, that relationship we don't see.
Right, right.
Um,
The number, you're right, that was a huge celebration that Josh shared, and we hope that bears out over a trend in time to improvement in scores, for sure.
But this doesn't separate out the students who are engaged in extracurricular.
No,
No.
correct.
It doesn't, but if the
So,
numbers are going up, you would assume that they would go up here.
Yeah, we would have to disaggregate that for sure.
Yeah, because those are 1.3% out of, I mean, how many students? 1.3% out of 5,000? Or so is that, 5 students? What, I think the percents are one thing, but numbers are important there, because Jay's was 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and I don't know how many students that is, 5,000. So once we start looking at 1% of 5,000, how many students really is that?
I don't know the answer to that question, but in some ways, I'm not as concerned about it, because I'm going to exaggerate this to make a point. And that comes really close to me of explaining something away as opposed to explaining it.
I just want to know how many students. 3.2% doesn't represent, not explaining it away, it's just how many students are we talking about?
I just would like to see the numbers less red,
Yeah,
more green.
I think that's the summary. And if I may, I'm going to move on to reading.
If
Yes.
it's
Can I ask the
1%,
question, though,
doesn't mean
the
anything.
fiscal year 20, the column with the 45.7 and on down, with the all, that's 45.7% did what?
Oh, sorry, on or above grade level.
Okay.
45, so this one, math, 36.3% of our kids are on or above grade level as compared to middle of the year this year, middle of the year last year.
And even that, it seems to me,
Yeah.
the baseline from last year does not make me want to stand up and cheer.
Right, even if it were green, is what you're saying. If it were green a bit, it's still not the standard.
That's exactly right, because we kind of overlooked 45.7 and just looked at the red to the other side of it.
Right.
The red is concerning, but the uncolored middle column there is also of some concern.
Yeah.
I would like those numbers over time, if, as I believe is the case, that increased engagement leads to increased academic achievement. The number in that middle column, those numbers ought to be going up.
That would be the goal, for sure. So let me share reading. So reading is, there's some green. We went down, ticked down by 0.4%, so a little bit less than 0.5% year over year. A couple highlights: Hispanic, adverse to the other one, went up by 3.6%, ELL by 1.6%. Subgroup gaps, again, 4 out of 4 closed. Some of the same comments I think we can be shared there, but there are some celebrations there. The next one, course failure. This is for just middle school, 6th through 8th grade that we're sharing tonight. It did tick down by 0.2%, which has been a goal for our middle school team to really focus on those. Some subgroups to share, again, IEP, down, again, ticked down, not some large numbers there, but a little bit of green. Subgroup gaps on the right-hand side are not what we want as far as closing the gap, so some of those grew. NG means no growth, so no change in the gap there. So let me jump into high school academics, what I have to share. Yes, sorry, Jerry. Go
Before
ahead.
we go, and it's not so much necessarily just the middle school.
Sure.
Beginning of the year versus middle of the year versus the end of the year.
Yeah.
Do we have statistics? I was trying to look through the report again to see if there's anything. Progress from beginning of the year to middle of the year.
We do. Growth. That's in the report, sure. This is actually.
Trying to find out, I couldn't remember where I saw
Yeah,
it.
this is status, so we did not share it in
You
the
didn't show growth at
presentation
all.
growth, but it is in the report, shows if kids grew or if schools grew, the district grew, correct. That's two different data points.
That would be more.
The other number that I think would be helpful to know is what that looked like last year, so I can see if it's worse or better or essentially the same. Do you have that?
If you're asking, so 7.5 course failure, it ticked down by 0.2, so the year before would be 7.7. Is that what you're asking?
Middle of the year.
We could put a column, but I think that's what you're asking.
I'm not sure that is, but I
Okay.
hear you.
Yeah.
But that perhaps what I'm asking is not there.
Yeah, but maybe not as clear if you had a separate
Okay.
line. Lena, did you have a question?
I do, but do you want to keep going and then I'll ask my question?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great. Thank you. So course failures at the high school level, this is, there's a lot to celebrate here. All green as far as subgroups. The only subgroup here is full that had no change. Overall, we had 1.1% reduction in course failures at our high school level, 9th through 12th, and ELL at 4%, IEP at 1.9%, free at 2.6%, which those are some of the target subgroups that we're going for. Subgroups, two of the subgroups that had a gap closure were free versus full and ELL versus non-ELL, and the other two, black versus white, Hispanic versus white, the gap grew at 0.6. So before, I'm handing it off to someone else, Alina, so go for it if you'd
Yeah.
like to ask me a question.
I feel like I'm saying the exact same things because I've been here for 4 years now.
Sure.
And one of my strengths is context, but I will just say that I'm looking in the white paper to see if the context is there, and by scanning it, I only see 19 and 20. And so I'm just thinking that, Charles mentioned not just looking at data points with iReady. I mean, iReady's been around now for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
In our district now. So I'm just wondering if it would be helpful when we get these type of presentations to see, all the years midpoint and looking at it. When we just take 1 year and look at it against the previous year, it's kind of, I don't know, I just don't feel like it's
Too narrow.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's comprehensive enough to make any type of judgment on,
Yeah.
essentially,
Simply a comparison rather than a trend, and you'd like to see a trend as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I hear you. Yeah.
And I want to see, because we're not comparing apples to apples, we're comparing apples to oranges, meaning we're looking at a whole separate cohort.
That's correct.
When we are talking about the differences. We're not taking the exact same kids and comparing them to the next year's, test.
Yes.
We are looking at separate cohorts here. So it would be helpful to see the demographic changes, because when you look at these, my context strength is just like, well, what's changed? Did we, and I've said this before, so I know I'm repeating myself, but it's like, did we have an influx of ELL students that 1 year? And that's where we see those changes. So there's got to be a better way to see this, so that we're not just looking at it in a soundbite.
Yeah.
That we're looking at it more comprehensive.
That's what I was trying to say. You said it so much better. There we go.
Yeah, I hear you.
In any cohort, there would, 2/3 of the students, only 2/3 of the students would, because it's grades 3 to 5 or 6 to 8.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of those students would be represented
You're correct.
this year
That's
compared to
correct.
last year. But that third could be
Many kids.
unrepresentative in significant ways, or may not be. It may not be.
But can I look at third grade, middle of the year last year, and fourth grade, middle of the year this year? And you should have the same goal.
Kid-to-kid comparison rather than.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
cohort
not exact. I know it's not exact, but
Yeah.
it's significantly more significant, or.
Yes.
Significantly
It
more
probably is,
significant.
That's
That's
like
significant.
significant.
That's significant.
So Jerry, I think you
More
can, I don't
relevant.
think
Is
it's
that-
in the paper, but we can certainly.
But there's I was just looking at the chart that showed math, that showed, if I'm reading it right, like third grade for 19 was 57.9%. Third grade, that was grade level and up. Then the 20 year for fourth grade was 43%. So does that mean that's a decrease of 14%?
I hate to
I-
answer that right here without looking at it, but yeah.
I know you're shooting fish in a
Yeah,
barrel
I
here,
hate
I
to
understand
answer
that,
that.
but
Sure.
is the logic, not the number so much, but is
Yeah.
that the logic
Yes.
consistent?
Last year's third graders or this year's fourth graders, yes.
Would
that
be
correct.
closer than this group to the next third grade.
That logic would bear out.
In the subpopulation of Club Encore, we can literally track those kids.
Sure.
Because those kids were identified by meeting certain criteria. So we can do head-to-head comparisons
Yeah.
throughout.
So let me say this before I pass it off. We do have friends trapping your questions, so while I'm staring at you saying, yes, we can do that, we have people trapping what you're asking
They
for.
appreciate you saying yes,
Yes,
we can do that.
yes, and I'm saying, yes, we will look into it and taking that data. So I'm going to pass it off to my friend Dr. Pilley to take strategy 1.2.7.
Very happy
Thank
to
you.
pass that off on you.
Thank you. I will be back.
Nobody wants to talk.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Fascinating.
So I just wanted to share a few updates with you all. You saw in the paper we had a lot more things that we were able to share in terms of our mid-year report with regards to 1.2.7. Nicole Lemon and I are going to kind of share this strategy right here, and I'll talk about the tools, resources that we have access to, and then she'll come up and talk a little bit about launch. But just for your information, as you know, we adopted new K-5 ELA 612 math resources, specifically middle school and the fourth year courses for math. We delayed the Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 to this year, and then also adopted resources and curriculum for our Level 1 Academy Pathway courses at Glendale and at Hillcrest. Each of those teachers in those different groups received at least a minimum of 7 hours of professional learning, up to about 20 hours of professional learning throughout this first semester, with a focus on the content that they're focusing on, the pedagogy, and the resources, making sure that they feel comfortable with those. That professional learning has continued throughout the second semester and will continue again into the summer. And we have been collecting feedback from those teachers on what's working, what are they struggling with, so that we can gear that professional learning around their needs. Also, just very exciting with the academies, we have issued industry-recognized credentials to the students that you see on the screen. So with the OSHA 10 certification, 96 students there, and that was through the architecture, environmental science, and construction pathways at Glendale and at Hillcrest. And then we also 133 students earn their CPR, basic first aid, AED certifications, and that was through our health science pathways at those two schools as well.
Wonderful.
That will continue as we add additional levels of pathway courses. So next year we will add level 2, and so that will come with more industry recognized credentials. And additionally, students in level 1 classes will earn a few more this semester as well. Any questions before I pass it off?
Ooh, you got to say nice.
You were fast.
I know.
You were fast.
Some people got a
You
better
don't have any
draw.
spreadsheets.
I look at those spreadsheets a lot
I know you
with the
do.
crew who are up
I
here
know you do.
presenting, but yes, I got to do some great
Well done.
celebrations. Thank you.
Keep bringing good information, Nicole, because I'm pretty sad now.
This usually is.
Good evening. So I'm going to give you an update on the Springfield Public Schools status of launch. I do want you to know that a full program presentation will come in the April 2nd meeting. So we'll do a presentation on the status of launch as a whole program, including the state. So these numbers are just pulled out so you can keep an eye on virtual instruction in Springfield Public Schools. So during our fall semester, over 2,000 students took a virtual class with us, amounting to about 6,215 courses. So we continue to see, of the launch program, Springfield Public Schools is still the largest customer. So we're still serving the most students in our district and compared to any other district in the state. We did have over 3,000 credits earned, but I do want to particularly draw your attention to those credits earned through credit recovery and our programs that target our at-risk students. So a couple board members, 3 of you were able to attend a very special graduation with us last week and got to see one of those students cross the finish line. So we do, thanks to Launch, graduate students wherever they are in their journey. So we're really proud of that. And I'm also proud to report that our number last year was about 56, almost 60% of our graduates had taken an online class. The class of 2020 is now up to 76% of this year's graduating class has taken an online class.
Are all of those launch classes?
They are, that's correct. Yes, so I would like to remind you, we've done this without a board mandate or a credit requirement. This has just simply been done from word of mouth and providing a really high quality product to our families. And so that's continuing to spread. So during the fall semester, we paid out over $1 million in stipends across the state of Missouri. But I'm really proud that 62% of those go to our own teachers. So we're still the largest provider of educators. So we have a great relationship with our teachers inside of Springfield Public Schools. So we do hire them first. So that is our continued commitment to our own community. So we paid out over $652,000 in stipends that are all retirement eligible to our own teachers. So as a reminder, tuition dollars help to cover the cost of the stipends that our teachers are receiving. And just as an update, we are currently, of course my slides are always out of date the second I type them, so we're at 268 partners.
68.
As of this morning.
As of now, or is this 269?
Well, that's 268.
Oh, okay.
We count them as a partner before we get you.
Don't get greedy.
That's right. So we're approaching 1 and 2 school districts in the state. Any
Nice.
questions?
I'm sorry, I thought you had another slide, so I was.
Oh, I do.
I'm
sorry,
listening.
Alina, I do. Thank you. I'm not used to having another slide. I have one. I have some numbers. So it was a request of the board at the end of year report that we do provide a snapshot of what our students look like. So thank you for reminding me. So we had, again, 2,218 unique students. So I did go ahead and give you a comparison. So our overall student population, if you add middle and high school together, is 12,871. So the two in comparison. I am really proud that Launch is an inclusive program that invites and welcomes all students, and they feel great to be there. So I am so proud that our numbers exceed in some areas. So you can see we actually have a higher percentage of Black students who take Launch classes than the overall district average. And again, we don't report on things like LGBTQ communities, but we've heard from our students that they appreciate our environments, and I thank you for the work of our new diversity officer who's helping me with that work as well.
So a question for your friends who are listening and taking notes. I would like to know something about the math scores on our online.
So in April, we'll bring you a complete report and pull those out.
And I'd like to know if we're using similar or same curriculum and/or textbooks, or however we're delivering that. That's an archaic word I just added to your equation. But you know what I mean? I really would like to know a little bit more about the math scene.
So in April, we plan to bring you a complete report and pull Launch out. As a reminder, our scores feed back to their home buildings regardless of that they take it in Launch. So we're bringing that forward.
Could you also include, you may already have this in mind, the pass rates, since we saw the course failure rates going slightly down in some cases. I'd be curious to see if it's aligned with Launch.
Sure, absolutely. And we'll do our best to pull out SPS students, and remember, our overall data is going to be the state. So we'll do some
But
comparison.
I don't know if you know this about us. We care about students everywhere.
I know that you do.
Also, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of my slide.
Do you have any trouble recruiting our teachers to teach?
No, so I will tell you that our teacher shortages that we experience across the state, Launch is just a microcosm of that. So we are the math and science provider now for many, many districts across the state who cannot find one. We had a district last week who had a science teacher quit, so we received 150 chemistry honors students from a very high-performing district. And 2 of our SPS teachers stepped up and took it and went and actually drove and met the students. So they wanted to meet them face to face.
Teaching all of those?
That's right. So they went to go meet them, put eyes on them, and took that on. So we don't have a problem necessarily recruiting, but we are low on science and math, just like the rest of the state. So
Well, I'm not available, so.
me neither.
More qualified.
I would be
Denise might be, but anyway.
Yes, this lady.
Other stuff.
Denise and I have talked about that.
I bet you have. Well, you're doing
So
awesome.
we don't have a hard time recruiting, and even statewide, we get to find the best teachers in the state. So it's been a really great opportunity to meet We're up to 267 adjunct faculty right now.
Is there going to come a point where you need to ask us for more resources to run this so you can sleep at night?
We're getting there, so.
Okay, well, be aware, I would like to hear that at some point.
Thank you, Nicole.
Nothing.
You agree? or-
I will introduce Missy.
You have another? You look like
I
you're going to say
think it's
something.
coming. I think it's coming in our budget
Jacob,
request.
Good to know.
Hello. I have
Hello
one
there.
slide and no charts, so it should be fairly straightforward. Thank you. So my highlights and next steps at this point. This year we added 175 Wonder Year students. That may sound like an odd number if you know that we put approximately 20 students in a classroom, but we have a couple classrooms Head Start co-qualifying, and then one of the classrooms that we added in one of the sites could only accommodate 15 students, so that's why it's a little bit of an odd number. And we had planned on 200 for this year, but we didn't have classroom space. So we actually only added 9 classrooms last year instead of the planned 10, and so that accounts for the 175 Wonder Year students. So you may have heard that the Ada Fulbright Early Childhood Center is slated to open in August of 2020 with 12 classrooms and 240 students. And we have a recommendation for hire for a new assistant director. We intentionally posted that as a general posting with our 3 assistant directors. They know that they may move depending on whose skills best fit which center that's open, since we'll have 3 Wonder Years early childhood centers for next year. So moving on, we've got some parents as teachers information in there too. Last year we completed over 750. What I was thinking when Josh was up here talking, these are our early childhood extracurricular events. The community connections. We really have made a concerted effort, thanks to the support of the board. We do a lot of things that aren't reimbursable by DESE funds that we're able to do with our staff, and this is part of the reason that we do it right here. And we are doing yoga. Somebody mentioned yoga when Josh came up. We have infant and toddler yoga and pre-K yoga. It's one of our most attended events, and we have a certified yoga instructor on our staff that we sent to training for that, and we're also adding infant massage coming up for next year. So
Word yoga?
and board yoga, and we could probably get Lacey in to do that. I'm sure she probably wouldn't have an issue. But one of the things that I like about doing this is that those events included more than 1,000 families that aren't enrolled in parents as teachers. So we use them as recruitment events, but we also know that realistically, not all families want home visitation. And so we try to offer at different levels. So 1,000 families in Springfield attended that weren't tied necessarily to parents as teachers, but we were able to talk with them about the services that we offer, talk with them about our preschool services, talk with them about developmental screenings, and so all of the other things that we do. So speaking of screenings, we're on track to screen probably a little over 8,000 children this year. We had set a lofty goal a long time ago of about 10,000. We're looking for them everywhere we can find them, and I'm just not sure we're ever going to get much past that 8,000 number, because we're screening in pretty much any child care center that will let us in. We screen at over 80 child care centers each year. We work with that. Our parent educators each have a screening quota. This year we have added mass screening dates. Typically in smaller school districts, that's all they do for kindergarten screening. They'll have either one day or maybe 3 days in a week where they're like, we're doing kindergarten screenings this week, and smaller districts will often ask me, so when do you guys do kindergarten screenings? And we literally do them all year long. So we're trying to find them anywhere we can find them, and but on track to do probably over 8,000 this year. And then I alluded to the mass screening dates for Wonder Years in kindergarten are scheduled for this spring. We have one this Friday when students are out of session, but our parent educators and our teachers are working those days. And then screenings will continue through the first day of the 2020 school year, and then we'll start all over again. So that's what I have.
Nice.
Thank
Any
you.
questions, comments for
Good work.
Missy?
Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, Dr. Garcia Busateri is up next. Sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I will be talking about strategy 1.29 in regards to diverse and underrepresented students. So this slide will be covering training. So all staff, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak up just a little.
Okay. All staff have been offered equity and diversity training through our office beginning of the fall. So all staff within the district. Senior leadership, along with their equity champions, as well as all of you, went through the Facing Racism training facilitated by Missouri State faculty. Equity champions, who are staff members with additional roles in the buildings to do some equity work, have also continued their learning with equity training facilitated by myself, LA, and Brian Vega. Oh, Brian Vega was at a different training, but along with our office. And then equity training has continued with senior leadership this spring, where we talked more in depth about identity and self, and then introduction to LGBTQ plus students and resources and support systems. And then also we've done some additional growth areas for ELT and SLT with just different diversity conversations during meetings and other bigger meetings as well. And then student engagement highlights. So middle school empowerment groups have increased this year with additional sites, bringing the number of schools involved to 6, which include Carver, Hickory Hills, Jarrett, Pipkin, Reed, and Westport. Elementary school empowerment groups have also increased this year with additional sites, bringing the number of schools to 5, which include Bowerman, McGregor, Portland, Weller, and Williams. And during the fall, 934 students participated in activities and events dedicated to equity and diversity, including the Youth Empowerment Summit with the NAACP, Steps to Empowerment, the Heritage Marker on the Square, ACT workshops, and then the Drury University keynote speaker. And then similar to equity training that was offered to the staff, we also offered some to students in the GoCap strand, which had a 2.5 hours equity training, which had 159 students. And then just next steps regarding my role. So I've continued my listening and learning tour, which has been focused on elementary schools, going to choice programs, going to child developmental centers, and also visiting with community stakeholders. I also partner with Tony Robinson, who's the president of the NAACP, to facilitate diverse student forums in all the high schools. And this was just an opportunity for me and them to just talk to the students and ask about their experiences, see how they're enjoying the district, and maybe get some of their own recommendations as well, because student voice is important. And then I've also partnered with Penny Rector, our Chief Human Resource Officer, to host staff forums to also engage with them to talk about their experiences, because we talk about climate and culture as being important for our students. We also think that's important for our staff. So we just had our first forum yesterday where we talked to teachers or staff who are on teacher contract salaries, and then we'll also be engaging operational staff as well as leaders. And then I will be meeting with you all soon to talk about my recommendations and findings. Questions?
What do you think for Yvonne?
So when you said you're going to be talking with us soon about your recommendations, is that recommendations coming from the EDAC?
So EDAC, as well as just recommendations from my own listening and learning tour, as well as any other assessments that we sent out.
Have you wrapped up the recommendations for EDAC?
So we had our last meeting this past week, so recommendations are in review right now.
Because, as we are in this, and that was one of my concerns, having served as board liaison on that.
Yes.
In that we get those recommendations in a timely manner as we're working on budget.
Yes.
In case anything has a dollar, a price tag,
Exactly.
a dollar tag.
Mhm.
So, or we will be getting those, but not till April.
I believe they'll come out in the formal presentation. I'm not sure if they'll come up before that, but we did wrap up last week.
Okay, and then also I have a question about the, so are you doing any partnering with, for example, like Glow?
With Glow?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing NAACP here, and so.
I haven't had any formal partnerships, but I did meet with Krista Mancado, who was the former executive director of Glow, just to kind of have, get her feedback. She was also involved in EDAC. I went on a tour of the Glow Center and met with some students there, so that was really the partnership, but we haven't done anything formally.
Yeah, okay, I just wondered that. And then also, I think I'm gonna go back up one, see if I can get, oops, wrong on the screen here.
I saw that.
I do the same thing.
Elementary school empowerment groups, that came up in a discussion with the EDAC. So can you talk a little bit about, so are those, the empowerment groups, are students that volunteer to be a part of that? Are they recommended by principal? Because I know that came up in a conversation, how to there was a little bit of controversy how those students were selected or volunteer, or where are we on that?
I believe my understanding is that based on the site building and kind of what the needs of the students are, LA or Gwen have met with the principal to kind of see what students need these additional supports, whether it's they need some mentoring from community members, they need an hour, maybe once a month, twice a month to kind of just come together to talk about things. I know they talk a lot about professional development in an elementary sense, like what do I need to be professional? You know, what LA has this program called What's in My Backpack. So what do I need to do? How do I study? How do I make good decisions? How do I talk about my own cultural pride? And then I think they do a really good job of bringing in community members who do sometimes have affiliations with those students, whether it's through family or just through the neighborhood or just through the general community. And then they talk about, one example I can share is with Gwen Marshall. She brought in chemistry and talking about like hair and how, the politics of hair as it relates to Black identity and how Black girls with all types of shades, all types of hair textures should be proud of their hair. So how can they take ownership of that? And that's really talking about hair products and hair products for me and how can I be beautiful.
Yeah, and I know it's a great program. I think just the question that came forward with the group was, are the students selected? Are they invited?
I think there's part of selection and an invitation. I don't know all the all necessary steps to it, but my belief is that there's always goodwill with it to ensure that these are the students that need this extra additional support.
And it may work differently at each site.
Yeah.
And that option should be available.
Of course.
To those principals. Okay. Good. Thank you.
I'm not going to go into the weeds tonight because I know we want to keep the meeting going. But
But
when
you're
you,
going the weeds.
comma,
Go ahead.
when you give your report, I would love to hear more about, and I know you just hosted the teacher, people who fall under
The
the
staff
teacher
forum?
contract.
Mhm.
But I'm just curious to hear more about what you're learning about that topic according to bullet point number 3 on the staff and leader forums.
Yes.
And that type of thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll bring that feedback.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Thank you.
Do you have friends taking notes for you too?
It's all in here.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Capturing that question.
Okay, so I am the
Graduation
last
rate.
strategy. I came back. I
You
told
can
you already.
graduate.
Yes,
You're done.
that's right. It's the end
Batting
cap
cleanup.
tonight. So this obviously centers on graduation rate. I'm going to share some highlights and next steps. So as of February 25th, the cohort of seniors, so we call the fiscal year 20 this year's seniors, only had 89 students. I say only because that is a significant decrease from the past 2 years, from 182 2 years ago, 165 last year to 89. So we're under 100. Certainly, yeah, it's a very significant drop. And our teams, principals, their CSIs, their teachers are really working together to do that. So make sure I highlighted that. Mentors that have been placed just over a year now continue to work one-on-one with students to eliminate barriers towards graduation at the 3 schools that have those, Parkview, Central, and Hillcrest. One other highlight, we continue to use the Missouri Option Program in a great way. 240 students currently are in the Missouri Option Program. 99 had graduated as of this time. If you watch Twitter, they graduate daily. So it's a pretty neat strategy that all 5 high school sites are using. Some other steps I wanted to share. So as of, again, February 25th, when we prepared this report, the forecast data is showing that we will have another projected increase in our graduation rate, which will be in May. And so we're pretty excited about that. We're optimistic, very optimistic, and our sites have set goals and are looking to meet those goals. At the end of third quarter, the high school teams will do another full credit audit to see at the end of third quarter course failures, et cetera, to do another graduation rate forecast and really see what do we need to do fourth quarter to course correct for kids that may not be on track and celebrate with those kids who are on track to graduate in May. Lastly, site teams continue to be proactive about current freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. As we know, this approach we've taken the last 2 years with seniors will likely be less intense as we focus on the 9th through 11th graders and make sure we have less kids that are credit deficient, more passing classes, and really support those kids before they become a senior. So that's been an increased proactive approach with our sites. Are there any questions about graduation rate?
Anything on graduation for Shane?
Thank you. So that's been the strategic plan update. If there are any additional questions that I or my friends can answer, I'd be happy to.
Well, as usual, by the time we get to this slide, you've been peppered with questions, so.
Peppered's a good word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on, and we're moving into the straightaway. This is item 11 is the report from administration. As you can see, the superintendent is not here to update, but is there anything from the deputy superintendent?
Did he send a proxy?
I'm happy to answer
I take it that that's a no.
We're
I
good.
admire John's brevity in this regard.
Yes.
He's in Jeff City, right?
The next item is legislative update, and I think one of the big topics is what is the number of that bill? 591. 2591, House Bill 2591. That is the one that is being proposed to change the makeup of the Board of Education, and pretty much the whole methodology of how the Board of Education would be made up. And I have contacted some or all of you, and I wanted to just get a discussion on this, because this bill only affects Greene County and only affects this district. So I'll just open the table up for comments. You want to start, Jerry?
You had to start with me, didn't you?
Well, you were just right in my line of sight. I know that nobody was making eye contact with me.
Well, I had to make some notes or I was going to ramble. So bear with me. Jill,
Sure.
brief.
Kathy's not going to turn the timer on, so you're okay.
No timer? No, you won't have to worry about a timer. You won't have to worry about a timer.
plenty of time.
But I've been thinking about this since it came up, and dwelling on this whole bill and trying to come up with why, the where, what for, and that kind of stuff. And so some of this stuff is kind of, I really, to preface what I'm going to say is, school board governance and leadership really does matter. And how we set it up and how we govern this district matters. And it's not just something that you can tinker with on a whim. Just all of a sudden, hey, this sounds like a good idea, let's do something with that. Because as you all know, being a school board member is hard work. There's a lot to it, and sometimes it's not for the faint of heart. We saw tonight, a lot of red stuff. I mean, things that it's hard, and things we have to do. We do strategic planning, we do fiduciary, we're the liaison of the community, we do policy. Most importantly, we hire the superintendent. Maybe that's the most important thing we do, is hire the right superintendent. And we all knew that when we ran for the board. That was not new to us when we ran for the board. And we all did that because we had the same mission, and that was to help all the students in Springfield Public School be successful and to achieve. And diversity is a great thing. This is not about that. It's a good thing, but it also comes in many forms. And one of the things that I think is really important, that we get a lot of diversity in opinion and perspective. And I think that is important. And it's not just based on a zip code that we get that kind of the diversity. Certainly, I think while sub-districting may increase diversity of the board, maybe nationally, evidence has shown it pretty much has decreased the board's focus on a larger, wide policy concern. That's been a national perspective, that it has actually decreased the perspective of school boards. This bill is going to change the dialogue of this board. It will change how we think. It will change how we address each other. It's going to cut down on the strategic discussions that we have, in my opinion. This is my opinion. That needs and should occur with this board. And it's going to force us individually to look at a much smaller perspective than we would normally look at as a board member that I would consider at large. One of the things that really, I guess, bothered me a lot with it was There was a lot of talk at last election about local control, especially from Representative Fiscal, about local control. And this flies just completely in the face of local control. And that's something that, certainly if I was looking for solutions to a problem, why in the world would I ever go to Jeff City to have somebody up there solve my problems down here? That doesn't typically bode well. One of the things I think is important is this bill is not based on research or data. It's based on emotion. And because I think he's getting some bad intel, bad information, and some bad advice, that's not based on fact. There's research is out there that supports at-large elected board members have a higher student achievement rate in their districts than sub-district school boards do. And so, if you're focused on students, that ought to be a factor that we're looking at. Because all students are important. None are any more important than the other ones. But they're all different. They all have different needs. They all have different resource needs. They all have different support services that we need to be providing. So the reason I got on the board was I want to focus on all those kids. And I think that's why you all got on the board, so you can make them successful. And another thing, I think it's going to create conflict unnecessarily between board members. Maybe not, maybe it does. But it's going to change the priorities of a board member. No longer am I as concerned about 25,000 students. I'm going to be inclined to look for the resources for my sub-district at the potential expense of others. Potentially. And that's not why I'm here. That's not what I want to do. Because every elected official, every politician's out there, their first priority is to get reelected. That's their first priority. They may not admit it, but that's their first priority, is to get elected. And so no longer, to me, are my constituents going to be students, they're going to be adults. And they're going to be voters who are going to vote for them in my area. And I want to make decisions that are based on the whole, that are good for all the students out there, not necessarily the ones that just happen to be in my district. So it's all about the adults and it's not about the kids. That this is so, like I said before, I ran to help 25,000 kids, not just the ones I live in Glendale district or Spurging or Wild or whatever else. Some comments, and I'm gonna sit down. I'll be almost done. One of the things I think sub-districting does is it also creates a lot of opportunity for very, very special interest groups to get involved that may or may not be a positive thing. Potentially. That's something I think we need to be thinking about. And if you just look at this bill, let's create, if you want to talk about divisiveness, he identifies 2 at-large members, which is not true, because if you have a north and a south, that's not at-large. So that's a misnomer right there. But you want to create, divides. Let's just put a divide in the city and have north side and south side. You're pitting people against people, and I don't think that's good. The bottom line is this is just a bad bill, and it makes no sense. And it really is to me, it's a bill that's looking for, it's a solution that's looking for a non-existent problem that's out there. And I know we don't have a position on it as a board. It's not in our platform.
Yes.
I would recommend, this is just my thought, that we put one together and adopt it at our next meeting potentially. This is board president's decision.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I would hope that we'd be able to give you some input, some information, something as we talk about to people in the community, to other reps or whomever, some talking points that you'll hear from all of us and do that. And get the green light to do that. There may be a hearing on it. I heard that there was going to be a hearing date, but I don't know that that's been confirmed. I haven't seen it on the calendar yet. but I heard that there's a possibility of a hearing. But, you know, to me, this is not a problem, if there is one, that needs a legislative directive. To me, this is a community issue. This needs to be dealt with at the local level as a community and not with legislation in Jeff City. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. We need to deal with it on a local level and address a problem if that is one, and do that. So step down off my soapbox, and I'll pass the plate in a minute. So I don't know. I've been thinking about this a long time since it came up. This has never made sense to me.
Yeah.
I appreciate hearing from you.
Bruce, do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, I was disappointed when we heard about this bill and even how we heard about it, because Representative Fiscal was at our legislative meeting and didn't take the opportunity to tell us he was thinking about it. So maybe this was just an epiphany all of a sudden that this is what was our biggest issue in this district, after we had discussed legislative things with a number of legislators at that meeting, and he spoke at that time, but didn't address this. And unless there's a board member that heard about it firsthand, ours was third-hand information, which that doesn't make sense. That would be like us addressing legislative priorities with somebody else in town and telling them to tell the legislators. It just, that does, so that was a disappointment to me on how we even heard about the bill being presented. And I think I on this, there was at one time a district, Terry will maybe remember too, that actually elected some board members this way, and that was St. Louis.
And was Kansas City.
And so I don't think we want to use them as our examples. I'll just say that, you know, and they're the only ones in the state that did that. So I don't think that is an example we want to follow. I think, again, I think the thing is, for someone to want to know what a board member does, you maybe talk to board members. That might be the first people you would want to talk to. So my point is, I've spent 50 years in this job of education and on boards and everything else. And here's what I know about Springfield. Every school in our district has Title I kids, IEP kids, 504 kids, behavior needs, minority students. They just don't have the same percent, but they all have the same type of issues. And so that's why, as a board member that represents every school district, we do things to help students in every school. It's not about a school building, it's about the type of students that are in every one of our schools. Every one, all 53 students have these students represented. And we try to do things that will help every student everywhere, not just one area of town, because they're represented every place. And to only do this for Springfield, to me, really makes no sense at all. We are not unique, although we like sometimes to think we are. We are with launch. But really, as a school district, we're not unique. We have parts of our community that represent different types of incomes and everything. So does every community in our state. I mean, any large community, even smaller communities have that. So why, if this is a really great idea to do something, then every school district ought to be included in this bill. And you ought to figure out how you're going to divide up those districts based on whatever it happens to be. But if they've got more than one elementary, or more than one middle school, or more than one high school, then they have some subsets in their community that would be different than others. So again, if you're going to do this for one, I find any bill that only addresses one place throughout the state it just absolutely makes no sense at all to me. And to me, the whole thing was just the process was a disappointment. The process was a disappointment, because if somebody could show me the data that this would improve student learning, I'd be the first one to champion this, but there isn't any. There absolutely is. In fact, it's just the opposite. So it's like, this makes, to me, to submit a bill like that is very disappointing.
Denise?
Want me to go next?
Yeah. If you have anything.
Oh, I have a few things to say. I'm like Jerry, I've been found out about this, so I've been thinking about it, and I've been seeking rationale. So looking for, okay, I always like to hear new things and new ideas, and so I've been looking for rationale for this and why this might work, why this would be important. So I'm going to base this on what I have heard in terms of an interview by the author of the bill and by an article in which he's quoted the author of the bill. And so my thoughts are that, first of all, the citizens of Springfield currently have and should continue to have, I'm like Jerry, I jotted down a few notes, so I want to stay on track, should have the power to determine the method the members of our school board is chosen. So we are the largest school district in the state, and we appreciate and we are striving to increase our diversity, and we want to celebrate that. But in doing so, we don't want to lose sight of our goal of promoting unity within our district. I fear that a sub-district approach could be, in reality, polarizing, as Jerry mentioned, and it could foster that divisive, competitive outlook approach among board members. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but as a Springfield native, I've worked hard over the years to encourage folks throughout the city to get past this idea of a north-south, north versus south perspective. And I fear that this type of a bill or legislation would only work to reverse any progress made in that. And so as it is now, anyone, regardless of where you reside within the school district, you have the opportunity to pursue board service if you want to go through the process. Anyone can step up now. So I guess my three questions that I would have about this is number one, do we need this change? You know, the true rationale for why we need this change. And then thinking ahead, how would this limit future very qualified people to serve on a board because of your residence? And then why should we allow, I say allow, why would we support state legislation that would mandate the way the citizens of our city, which we have very involved and very bright citizens, why should we allow them to mandate the way that we choose the makeup of our school board? I agree with that. And so personally, then on a personal basis, I guess I have to throw this in, that after listening and reading carefully the rationale for the legislation, I strongly disagree of statements made regarding that as a result of where I live, my residence, that I lack the understanding of the needs of students that live outside my neighborhood, and that I live in my own world. So I'm going to try to do this without getting emotional, because those of you that know me know I was born and raised in Springfield. I attended Fairview Elementary, which is a little annex by Hillcrest. I graduated from Hillcrest. I attended MSU. Then whenever I started my teaching career, I taught at Kickapoo for 16 years. Then I served as the district's K-12, and that's district-wide science facility. Then director of the Title I programs. And those positions put me in every school in this district, serving the needs of every child, K-12. And throughout those many years, I lived north of Kearney. I can even go one more north of Grant by the fairgrounds. I lived south of Battlefield, and I've lived west of Bass Pro Shop. I now reside east, however, north of Sunshine. I'm going to throw that in there. But all that to say that it is not where I currently reside. It is where my heart is with serving the Springfield. So where I live does not make me or anyone else better qualified to serve on a school board. And I believe that it's your lived experiences and your education that makes the difference. And every single person on this board, we are here because we have that wide desire to serve all the children in Springfield, not those in my neighborhood. And I believe it's not where you live, but it's how and what you have lived that helps you understand the needs and you care about the children of Springfield. So that's why on a personal basis that I do not believe there is a scientific, I do not believe there's evidence behind the statements made that we live in our own world, because we do not. We have been all over this city, travel all over this city to visit schools and to see what we can do to be of assistance. And I'm also thinking, had this legislation been in place in 2011, when I ran for the school board, there's a very good chance that I would not have been eligible to run for the board if there were other board members that live in Newton that were already in place. So I think about what we would lose out in the future if this bill became law, of very good qualified candidates because of the simple fact of where they reside. So I'm going to be strongly opposed, and I plan to be very vocal about my strong opposition to this.
Sounds like you've started.
I was like, what do you mean by become?
Charles?
Yeah, I won't bury the lead. I think I'll lead with the lead, and that is, if this is passed, and it would take effect in 2022, which would be the year I would run, if the bill is passed. Now, for some people, that may be a sufficient reason to support it, right? So I'll acknowledge that. And I wind up, I think, at the same place as my colleagues, but I take a different route to get there. I don't care one bit about the process. It doesn't bother me that Representative Fiscal didn't talk to me. I do not feel personally attacked by him. I've frankly given it that much thought, in all candor. But the bill does concern me. But where I come at it a little bit differently, the appeal to representation and equity of representation, to me, is real, and it's important. And I think we need to acknowledge that. I don't believe the way to get at it, because I think we need to acknowledge that in most years, everyone around the board table kind of sort of looks like us. And in every year, nearly everyone around the board table over the years has kind of sort of looked like us. And that's a reality, it seems to me. That said, each one of us very hard, I think, to represent, and that's why I would not run under this, because I'm not interested in representing a sliver of kids. Okay? I'm interested in, we all try to get outside ourselves. I guess I would respectfully disagree just a little bit that we do live in our own worlds, right? And I think we need to acknowledge it. We're the products of experiences, right? And our experiences are different. That said, we try to get beyond those as best that we can, recognizing that we will always do it imperfectly. And I think everyone around this board, even if we disagree, and we do occasionally, I think we do recognize that our primary motive is what's good for all kids. And so while I privilege that notion of equity, those notions of equity and representation, I'm still not at all supportive of this. And I normally don't consider myself to be part of the paranoid bloc, right, which there is a substantial number of folks. At the same time, I'm not sure I buy this, in my mind, frankly, superficial commitment to representation. I find it a lot easier to accept if there wasn't a supermajority party that was perfectly willing to consider, or even, frankly, to brag about their intention to override questions of representation, right, and override the will of Missouri voters. And so, frankly, I'm a little skeptical, right, whatever the motivation is. All of that then leads me to really worry that the impact of this bill would not be equity of representation. It would actually be balkanizing representation, frankly, kind of zoning it, right? Mm-hmm. Almost a kind of tokenism. I won't attribute intent to anyone because I don't know anyone else's soul, But given the evidence I have in front of me, that seems to be the most likely outcome, whatever the intended outcome. Like I said, I don't feel personally attacked. I'm kind of puzzled where this came. But I'm also not all that worried about where it came from. But ultimately, as I said, I would not run again to represent a zone because I think it contributes to something that costs us more in the long run as a community and as a board.
You want to offer anything, Joe?
I do not.
Oh, come on.
Alina?
I'm good.
Appreciate these comments, and very little I disagree with, even the ones that you said I disagree with you. I'm like, well, you're both right. Both make a very good point. I think what unites this group, at least based on what I've heard at the table tonight, is that we oppose this approach. I know I do, and I've gone on record saying that. Now, I did offer something and it got printed that I later found out was wrong, is that we can't, by board vote, change the number of signatures. And I talked to the reporter about that, and she said she would correct that or reflect that in the online story. So I was wrong when I said that. If you believe that reducing the number of signatures might help to diversify the board, that does have to happen with state legislation. That's just the way things are set up. This is a community issue. The issue that, for better or worse, Jefferson City has a certain degree of control over, simply because of the way things are set up. But I still need to hear what the problem is. I think the community does. And I think the community need to be in dialogue about this. I think the proponents need to state their case. And I think it needs a fair hearing in Springfield before it gets a fair hearing in Jeff City. And so I think this is a little. I also think, Jerry, that we should amend our legislative platform. And if I can get a head nod on that, I'll instruct administration to help structure something, and that we vote the next board meeting.
To clearly outline our opposition to this proposed legislation?
Or to legislation like this.
I would
Probably
make it
say
generic
something
enough as
that
not
we,
2591, but
probably put it in the positive that we support the continuation of at-large school board
exactly.
positions, something along that line.
Yeah.
Get a head nod? Yeah, I'm looking around the table. All right, well, we will ask administration to do that. Anything else on this topic? Okay, where are we on the agenda? That was the legislative update. Anything else need to be updated, Jerry?
There's just a lot of stuff going on up there.
Okay.
Nothing new, really.
If there is a public hearing, if there is a House hearing, I will be going. I know Denise has expressed interest also in participating in that, Jerry. Yeah. I think it's important that the House colleagues on the committee hear from people in the trenches. All right, any other, the next item is board comments. I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Let me announce some upcoming meetings, y'all. Of course, this isn't a meeting, but everybody around here is excited that next week is spring break, March 16 through 20, and on the district offices will be closed, so get your business done with them by Thursday. Our next regular meeting will be March 24, same bat time, same bat station. And then the Rose Banquet, which is one of the highlights of school board service, is seeing students. The 2020 Rose Banquet is Thursday, March 26th, at 6 p.m. Our host is Drury University. And that's Thursday, March 26th at Drury. The Plus Delta purpose statement, I've seen some people scratch some things down. Good to have some things to do in executive session. And therefore, the recommended action is that the board meet in executive session to discuss legal, real estate, and personnel matters as provided in section 610.021, paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 13 of the revised statute.
So moved.
Thank you, Alina. Is there a second?
Second.
We ready to vote? Please vote. The ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned.